Welcome to the video installation series presented by Advanced Sport Touring. The first thing you're going to want to do is take a towel and place it over your gas tank and the plastic areas to prevent damage. To install these risers, we're going to need to make a little bit of slack in the lines. To do that, we're going to be opening up a wire clip that holds our brake and clutch cables. This clip is found if you follow your cables from your handlebars straight down. There'll be this clip right here. To open this clip, you're going to want to have a screwdriver handy. You're going to want to place it in between the teeth so that it doesn't lock anymore. Then you're going to take your finger and pull up on the back side here. You'll lose your screwdriver, but it'll open. And you're going to want to do this for both sides. Once again, just follow your cables down and you'll see one on each side. I've gone ahead and done this because it's impossible to film. Our next step in the installation process is going to involve adjusting the angle of our brake line on the right hand handlebar. As you can see, it angles off to the outside of the bike. What we're going to try and do is get it to go more in a straight line. And to do this, we're going to be adjusting our banjo clamp. The banjo clamp is located on your right hand handlebar. It's going to be this black nut right here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be loosening this just enough so that we can turn the line going more towards the middle of the bike. When you loosen this, it's going to pop suddenly and you might lose a little bit of fluid. That's normal, don't worry about it. So to do this, we're going to take our 12mm wrench. We have it open just a little bit and we're going to turn it so that the line is going more towards the center of the bike. Then go ahead and tighten that back up. And when this is accomplished, the brake line is going to be slanted more towards the center and it's going to be bent more, so that'll accommodate the added lift in our handlebars. The last thing we're going to do to increase the length of our lines is to remove the bolts holding our brake junction blocks. There's one on each side. So we're going to go ahead and do that with our 10mm wrench. There we go. And now you can see it's moving freely. And there's our second bolt. And our other side is now hanging freely. We're going to remove the bolt covers. You can do this by using a screwdriver or any other small flat object. Oh, that one's gone. That's alright. Okay, now that we have all of our bolt covers off, we can go ahead and remove our bolts. To remove these bolts, we're going to use a 6mm Allen key, also called a hex key. And you're going to hear a little pop when you're loosening them. That's normal. I'm going to use a different tool called a speed tool. Get these out a little quicker. And hold on to these bolts because we're going to use them later. And then when you get to your last bolt, you're going to want to support the handlebar assembly with your hip, so that way it doesn't fall. And then we're going to go ahead and rest it on the bike. Try and prevent it from scratching up your bike while you're doing that. Our next step in the process is going to be to grab your right hand riser, and you can tell the difference between these ones. If you were to take your left one and flip it over, it looks exactly the same, except for on our right side, your hole is going to be higher up on the riser. So take your right one, put it into position, take your handlebar, line up your holes, take one of the 80mm bolts and slide it through, screw it in a little bit, take another 80mm bolt, do the same thing, tighten one of these up, just hand tight. We're doing this to keep it in place. Take your third bolt, put some Loctite on it, line up your hole, screw it into the hole, tighten it up hand tight, take out your other bolts, put some Loctite on them, and tighten them both up. After you get all three of your bolts in, hand tight, the recommended torque specs for these are going to be 16 to 18 foot-pounds. After you get all three of your bolts in and torqued down, go ahead and check them one more time to make sure they're all 16 to 18 foot-pounds. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the left-hand side. We're going to go ahead and remove our bolts. Remove your last bolt, support it with your hip, set it down on your towel, take your remaining riser, put it into position, put your handlebar on top, put your 80mm bolt through, thread it into the hole, take another 80mm bolt, thread it into the hole, and then tighten one of them hand tight so that your handlebars will stay into position. Okay, take your last bolt, Put your Loctite on it. Slide it into the hole. Get that hand tight. Remove your top bolts. Put Loctite on them one at a time. Put them back into the hole. Recommended torque specs for these 3 bolts are going to be 16 18 foot-pounds. After you torqued them down, go back through, check them one more time to make sure they're 16 18 foot-pounds. Our next step is going to be attaching the brake junction blocks to the risers. We're going to be reusing the black bolts that we took up initially. Slide them through the junction and then screw them into the riser. Get your 10mm wrench. Recommended torque specs, 8 foot-pounds. On the right hand side of the bike, if you don't have anti-lock brakes, you're going to be using this bracket that comes with the kit. You're going to go ahead and, with the larger hole, that's going to line up to the place where your brake junction block used to be. You're going to take your smaller bolt, you're going to thread it into that hole. Take your 4mm hex Allen key, tighten that up to 8 foot-pounds. Take your junction block, put your other bolt through it, and then screw it into the other hole in the bracket. For bikes with anti-lock brakes, we're going to be repeating the same step that we went through on the left-hand side of the bike. We're going to be taking our black bolt that we initially took out, feed it through the junction block, and bolt it directly to the riser. Recommended torque spec, 8 foot-pounds. Once we've completed that step, the only thing left to do is to put our bolt caps on. And those just pop right into place. Now that we have our bolt caps in, we want to go ahead and check to make sure we can turn our handlebars freely. There's no binding. Everything's moving the way it should. Go ahead and start up your bike. Make sure that it's idling at the same place it was idling before you installed the risers. And if all is well, go ahead and take it for a ride and then double check to make sure all your bolts are still torqued down to their original specs. And that concludes our installation of the 2-inch risers presented by Advanced Sport Touring.